Hi, I'm Adam Meyer of Mill City Lutheran in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I'm going to do a parts caster video today on locking nuts, how to get them installed and choosing the correct size. A customer brought in a brand new fender neck. He bought direct from the factory. He's going to do the rest of the build himself, but he's not able to install a locking nut. And this is specifically the neck he wanted. So he went through. We picked out a locking nut for it. I'll explain the reasoning for choosing it to fit this neck. There are different string spacings and nut widths, what you need to consider, what will fit best, because sometimes, it may not seem like it fits, but it's actually what will perform best. So let's get started. Okay, you're not imagining anything. This is my surrogate body. I use this for doing fret dresses and other things with bolt-on necks. And same deal with this. Customer has the body at home. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you here. Just got the two outer strings on because there's a really important measurement with ordering a locking nut, and that is the string spacing. It is from the center of your E string to the center of your E string. If I can get this up over the top, this nut on the fender is pretty good. You want roughly like right about a ½ inch from the edge of the string to the edge of the fingerboard. That's kind of the average, sometimes a little bit less, sometimes a little bit more, but the average. And so what we want to do is we want to replicate that. And so for me, I would measure this with my dial calipers, but I'm assuming most people watching this video do not have those, so it comes down to using a ruler, whether imperial or metric. You're going to have to get that distance there, E to E. That's what matters most. There will also be a measurement for the side to the side, but you can end up with a nut where you get the side correct, but the strings are going to end up really close together, or they might be shifted on one way or the other. Getting the strings lined up really well is crucial. It feels way better than any other thing. So, you can see here, this is the nut that was provided, and it's like pretty much just eyeballing it, it's a match. But I can feel with my middle finger and my thumb as I hold it here, it's just a tiny bit wider than the neck. But that's not really what matters. Your hand isn't going to be rubbing against that. You're never going to feel it. So this is, for what Floyd Rose makes, this is the correct size nut for this neck. Another very important measurement for selecting the right locking nut is having the radius correct. I have these radius gauges here, and I'm going to show you. I know that the customer told me he ordered a 12-inch, and I've checked it as well, and that's a really good 12-inch radius. And you can see here on this nut that, if I get my thumb out of the way, that's really good. The locking nuts are never perfect. The plating can vary a little bit here and there throughout the nut, but this one is a pretty good fit. Now, I'm sure on their website they have the same thing, but I have this with the packaging here, and I'm just going to run down what we have here. We have the width, which this isn't as important. The radius is important. You can see we got a 12-inch there, and we got a bunch of 10-inch down here at the bottom, or 15-inch. So we know that ideally we want to be up here with the 12-inch. And when we check the E to E center, what I'm measuring is pretty darn close to that. So we're looking at an R3, but it's for a Stratocaster with the truss rod nut up here. Ideally, you would want a bullet access, but as you can see here, that with this string spacing and width of nut, it's just not available. So we're just going to have to install this. It's going to play a lot better, but when it comes setup time and adjusting your neck relief, it's a little bit of a hassle. The nut will have to be pulled out of place, so you can make a little adjustment on the truss rod and put it back together. But, you don't actually need to adjust your truss rod that much. This is the better option to getting something else that you're sacrificing string spacing and radius. Okay, we've got a crude drawing here to help illustrate the proper way of installing a locking nut. You want it to be really secure on the neck. So this is the side view of the fender neck. You can see how it kind of slopes down like that. It's, sloppy lines. Just deal with me here. Frets, so on. So this here represents the bottom of the original fender nut. If I was to route down only that far, then you're going to end up with the locking nut hanging out over open space back here. And when you have your full string tension and you dump your whammy bar, you're going to have this happening because you're still going to have the full tension of the strings going to the tuners on this side. So it's going to want to do that, and it can end up coming loose. So down here at the bottom, I'm going to route past the bottom of the fender nut until I get to the point where the locking nut can sit nice and flat, the full width of the nut on a nice solid shelf. That will make it as secure as possible. It should never come loose because of, dumping the whammy bar, because it's going to be sitting there nice and secure. The one issue with this is that I have to go low enough where I'm going to have to glue a wood shim back underneath the nut to bring it back up to be playable. That's just how it is. This is not a neck that was not built to have a locking nut, but to have it function correctly, this is the correct method. This is not good enough. Now, try and show the reasoning why I always recommend doing the top mount of the nut. Black outline as you're looking straight ahead at the guitar. This is the locking nut. We've got your truss rod channel here. That's already a bunch of wood removed from the neck. Now you've basically got a bolt that's definitely bigger around than the screw going in. So that's got a lot of wood missing from it right there. And this is just a small hole where the nut goes, where the screw will go in. And I can also show you just side by side. That's quite a difference in material there. So like I said, I always recommend doing the top mount. It's a cheaper install because I'm not having to put as much time into drilling out to get this to fit right. But also, look at that. That's just a lot of wood at a very crucial part of your guitar that's getting removed. So I always recommend this. If you're out shopping for a neck that comes pre-routed for a Floyd rose nut, go with this option. This is my routing jig. It just clamps around the neck, and you line it up so that the bit on the Dremel, which I had to kind of customize my stand a little bit, you want it to ride up real close to the front edge of the nut slot, but you do not want to touch this edge of the fingerboard. You do not want the nut coming this way at all, because then that will screw up your intonation. So sometimes the first couple passes I deliberately have it backed off a little bit, and then I'll kind of just nudge it up a little bit. Or even if there's just like a real thin bit of wood left on this wall, I'll just take it off by hand with a razor blade or a chisel or something. So it's time to get to work. I've removed the jig, got everything all done up, and this wall here is nice and flat. There is, you can tell where the original nut wall was. It's this darker color here. This is the fresh wood that I cut away, but there's no lip there anymore. That's nice and smooth. And this is flat all the way across. And here's the truss rod. I always take the truss rod nut out just in case it's, I'm anywhere close, but it's probably another 1/8 of an inch in there. So I put that back in. But what I have to do now is make 2 shims here. I'll make 1 strip and then cut it in half and glue it on. I'll just thin it out so it's, close to the height to get the nut up, because this is obviously a little bit too low now. But you can see that edge right there, that's right where the nut meets. So this is going to be nice and strong. So I've got the nut back on, and I trimmed down the wood base underneath. As you can see, I'll pull it here out of the way. Made room for the truss rod wrench to go through, because even if this doesn't have the bullet access, if this was one piece across, it's still blocking the truss rod. So, it's two pieces. Sand it to the correct height. So I push this back up against the fingerboard. And like I was pointing out before, what's important is that we have equal space on both sides. I'm just kind of eyeballing it here for you to show you on the video. I'm going to have to move the camera out of the way to actually do the work. But we get it all lined up nice and even. And the way I like to do it is I only do one screw first. I'll drill it and I'll screw it in, because these are really hard to get in place and have them stay where they are. You can end up having the screw pull the nut this way, go that way, whatever. And it's a lot easier just to fix one hole and correct everything than to drill both of them and have to do the whole thing over again. So this is a very kind of delicate part of it. I'm going to drill to fit this one screw. Going to do the treble side first, and take a look at how well it's sitting there, and then if everything is all good, I'll do the bass side. There you go. I've got the first screw in. Everything still lines up just right. I can double check with the ruler. I'm going by the 32nds of an inch here. It's just barely shy of 1/8 of an inch on either side, so it's centered really well. So then I do the base side, mark it with the center punch. It's a little hard seeing all the way down in there, but that's what you got to do. And then repeat the process, drill the other one, and it's time to start shrinking the whole thing up. All right, here's the last step of this install, is putting in the retainer bar. Not all neck designs need the retainer bar. Just depends on the angle of the peg head. The string needs to rest close to the back of the locking nut. If you notice here, before we watch the string, that wiggles there. So when I go to clamp that down, it's going to get pulled way sharp. The retainer bar will hold the string down where it needs to be, so that you can tune the guitar, lock it in place, and then use the fine tuners to get everything just right. So what I'm going to do is line this up where the screws are between the two E's, not too close to the tuner, not too close to the nut. Otherwise, it's just, you can't get a string on the tuner, or it just kind of wants to bind up next to the nut. And I'll kind of eyeball it here, make sure I'm centered, and mark it with the center punch. And I'm going to only do one drill, mount it, have the string slacked, and then I'll mark the second one to make sure that I don't end up with the retainer bar being angled like that, because it's such a fine work to do. It's real easy to get that screwed up. So my personal method is just get the one in place first and then line up the second one. All right. there it is, all complete, installed. As I was saying, there's a little bit of an overhang on the treble side, but what really matters is making sure that the strings line up across the fingerboard. Trust me, you will not like it if your strings are all bunched together or hanging out over the sides, so on. Another thing is we've got the shim built up under here. This one, I don't have any shims. I got it close enough where it's going to be fine. You can also just take the nut off, sand that down just a little bit, keep it square. Or you can do it a little bit lower than you need and put some metal, they're locking nut shims under to get it to the correct height. You're not going to be able to adjust strings individually, obviously, but just get things kind of averaged out. Some might be a little high, some might be a little low, but this one should turn out really well. So time to return this one to the customer. If you have any questions about this or any of my other videos, my contact information is in the About section of my channel, and we'll see you next time.